This meeting is being recorded.
There you go, little announcement for everyone. This meeting is being recorded. So we've introduced ourselves. We'll go through the agenda quickly now, and then we'll get into the presentation. We've tried to save plenty of time at the end, so anybody on the call, if you've got a question, we will keep some time at the end, or I've got my other screen up with the chat open, so when I finish doing the introductory part of this, I'll keep my eye on the chat and we'll try and answer some questions as we go, or kind of bank them up for the end as well. So just drop them in the chat if you want to, and we will pick them up. So just quickly on the agenda, I'm going to talk through the project background in terms of what we've been doing, and then I'm going to move on to talking about one of the most important parts of the project, actually right at the beginning, when we did a survey across a number of SEND schools, or with schools working with SEND students, and we've got some learning points that we wanted to pull out for you. The whole point of the purpose of this session is it's a learning session really, for us to tell you about what we've learned doing this particular project, because we're fairly sure that if these asks and these needs are common across Lancashire, D2N2 and South Yorkshire, there's probably a need in other careers hubs and other regions as well. So we wanted to share this because we're getting lots of questions about what it is that we were doing. So I'm going to share some key learning points from the school survey that we did, and then we're going to move on to the second half of the kind of input, where John and Matt are going to pick up, and they're going to talk about the development of the SEND framework, as we're calling it, that we've created it, and the online content that surrounds that, and then we're going to talk about how we're making that more meaningful on the START platform for students to engage with. So they're the things that we're going to be going through in fairly quick succession, leaving time at the end for some questions. We've had a few more people join us, so hello to all of you. I'll just let you in. We are recording the session, so you've probably missed about a minute's worth of input, so we're recording it and you'll be able to catch up with that bit if you want to afterwards. So just to move on to the background, and hopefully my slides are keeping up with me as I click through. Like we said, this is a collaborative project we've been working on across D2N2, Lancashire and South Yorkshire. I'll come on to the benefits of that collaboration in a little while, and I know Matt wants to touch on it later. But it's been something that we've been running in partnership with them and a number of schools across those three different regions. The aims that we have been set by the Careers Hubs is to help with these three things that you see now on screen. So first and foremost, it's about improving the accessibility and usability of careers information. And I've underlined those two things and just pause on them because they mean two quite different things. Accessibility in terms of the things that you would imagine that a digital platform should be able to do to make information more accessible to any type of user with a range of different needs, whether that's visual impairment or anything else. So just being able to kind of view, to hear, to engage with the content that's available, versus the usability. I think it was identified by the hubs that there's loads of information out there, but not much of it is in a format that is usable for young people or teachers and advisors that are working with them, or certainly the key information that they'd want to isn't necessarily in the best form for them to be able to engage with and use in a meaningful way. Coupled with that, there's gaps in careers information, advice and guidance, or not quite the right information and advice that's out there for young people with SEND. So we were charged with addressing that. And then finally, there was a big and a strong need for helping to develop more of a digital vocational profile. Lots of schools with their students will develop paper-based activities around digital profiles, which we'll come on to in a second. And they wanted to take the best of that and start to develop it into something digital, which could be used by and taken with the young person and shared with the people who need to know ultimately. So we've been looking at that as well. The whole intention of collaborating, and Matt will pick up on this a little bit more at the end, was so that we could kind of pool resources, if you like, and build the common infrastructure, something that would be consistent across the three areas in terms of the user journey, the user experience. A lot of the information that was would be accessed is common to the 3 regions. But really key to this was that each region would then want to be able to tailor it to their area. So tweak some of the activities, tweak some of the work that we're going to talk about, but most importantly, looking at how they could make sure that local labour market information was reflected in the experience that their users were having. Hence why it's common, but can be tailored to each region. So we're going to dive into this in a little bit more detail in a second. From a timeline point of view, it's useful for you to see, I think, that this hasn't happened overnight. I think by the time that we actually soft launch this into the 3 regions towards the end of this month, beginning of next, it'll be the best part of 9 months that we've spent. As you can see there, the first stage was consultation involving 24 schools across the region, who have all given some quite detailed feedback on what's missing and what they want. We established a working group, as you would with these things, and established pretty early that we couldn't do everything. We had to focus on some certain things, and some things would be left on the shelf for the future. We've spent a lot of time underpinning or looking at the underpinning kind of user journey and the experience that we want young people to have, not just putting information out there for information's sake, but really considering how they're going to engage with it and what they're going to get out of that engagement. And so it's only now really that John, who's going to be talking shortly, has started the process of actually creating the content, and our technical team have been trying to improve the kind of the technical side of the platform to match up with John's aspirations around how engaging and good this content should be. But like I say, this month later into early next, we'll be testing and launching this into the schools in the region, and over the summer term getting the feedback that we need to be able to get some user testing and ultimately make some updates so that come September they've got the fully fledged product available to them to be using with their young people. So it's not a short timescale to get this right. Couple of things I want to just mention before I hand over to John, who's going to talk about the more interesting stuff, if you like. 2 things: accessibility and content. That's what we've been focusing on, is what information do young people need, and how do we make it most accessible and more accessible to them. So we thought it'd be useful just to share with you that if you are out there developing your own solutions, if you are working with SEND partners and looking at how to deliver good careers information, particularly in an online format, then we thought these 5 things might be useful to you. This is a result of the consultation that we did. And so just pulled out the top 5 accessibility needs that came back. And top of the pile by some distance was making sure that the information on the page is well thought out and absolutely consistent in terms of the page structure, so that there was a familiar flow through each of it. But it's really important from a page structure point of view that a page is built in a way that actually it improves the experience for young people with things like screen readers and the ability to kind of pick out headings, links, and find the information that they need speedily. So that came out top of the pile. A few other things that were worthy of mention were dyslexia friendly fonts and more accessible fonts were really key. So making sure that having good information is accessible in a way that young people with those particular needs need to engage with it. Captions on videos came down slightly lower than we thought, actually, but was still there. So having the option to be able to watch something with captions on. Interestingly, that's not just an accessibility point, that was a usability point as well. Often we found that young people in schools are in classrooms full of people with iPads and other computers, and actually being able to turn the sound off and watch something with captions on was just as important to that audience as it was necessarily to a young person who maybe needed them for other reasons. So that came out not quite as high as we thought, but it still did. And then a range of kind of requests around the ability to customize the site so that young people could highlight links, use screen readers, invert the colors, the contrast, and all those other things, which actually are only useful if you've got the number 1 right and you've built the pages in a consistent way, in a well-structured way. So we thought that'd be useful just to share, because obviously it's important to us to make sure that we don't ruin the good content that we create, if you like, by not making it accessible and friendly to a lot of the users in schools who've got these additional needs. So moving on to my kind of final point, if you like, around the content side of things. So we consulted with the schools in the region around accessibility, but when we asked them about content, what we found was that the survey scores, so their needs on average, were considerably higher than what they're given to the accessibility features. The indication, therefore, being that there's a greater need out there in schools for the right kind of content, as opposed to necessarily the accessibility features and everything that comes with that. And within all of that, there was a real strong preference for information that was either led by an employer or focused on an employer. So rather than talking about things generically or out of context, the two things that kind of came back were make it employer-led, or at least related to an employer, put it into a context, and include some localization in that. So familiarity of the employers that young people maybe walk or drive past or see in their surrounding community all of the time. So that came back really high in terms of the feedback. In terms of the kind of content needs specifically, the three that came back as top of the pile listed there. So the first one was they wanted more activities that would develop workplace and employability skills and knowledge, more activities and tasks that would engage a student with local post-16 and post-18 providers and their information, be that support that's available for young people with SEND in colleges or course information, whatever that might be. And then access to the work experience placements, whether they're supported or relevant placements and opportunities for young people in this particular cohort from local employers. So they find there's a huge gap in terms of being able to find those types of employment opportunities or supported placement opportunities for young people, and that the more we could do to actually bring employers in who have opportunities to offer and connect them with young people, the better. So there was a real gap around that. And just finally, before I hand over to John, one of the key things from me was that I pulled out of the survey was that what came back was that lots of providers work with a range of different young people. So it was really important that we chose an audience, and I'd advocate, if you're doing things as well, that you can't do this for the whole spectrum of needs that are out there, or the range of, I guess, severity of needs as well. So our audience that we chose was to focus on those young people capable of moving into employment or training after school or college. But at the same time, even within that, there are a range of different needs and capabilities. So whilst we've pitched this at young people who can independently use our platform and access the content available, what we're also looking at is making absolutely sure that we're creating the resources for teachers and advisors to be able to use the content with young people who maybe can't access it independently. So it's just as important for us that we're developing that guidance and resource for those teachers as it is for having a young person who's able to use the system independently as well. So they're kind of the headlines of what we've found so far. And I'm just setting the context now for what John and Matt are going to go on and talk about. And where we've got to is we now at the point where, like I say, John is starting to build this content, and this is where we're going to talk to you a little bit more about where things like LMI and other content will feed into this. So I think that's it from me. John, do you want to move on to yours now?
I pull on it, should take over your screen. So hang on, go for this one. Share. So everybody should be able to see my PDF. Can you see that screen there?
Yeah.
Is it clear? Is it large enough?
Looks okay.
Good. I'll zoom in. If it does need to zoom in, let me know, and I'll zoom in even further. So yeah, what I thought when we were creating the journey, or the user journey of what our students would be doing when they complete the profiles or the new sort of activities, is we start with the end in mind, and like everything we work towards, it's what is the main outcome, what do we want young people to achieve, what do we want the advisors and what do we want the teachers to achieve. And with that starting with that end in mind, it helped myself to kind of work out what the stepped process would be in terms of creating an activity or a range of activities that draw out the information from a young person, or for an advisor to help bring that information out, and surface it onto their start profile. And what it made us do is we revisited how that start profile would look for a send audience, which has also made us sort of like revisit how it would look for the wider audience, not just your send students and those who are working with them. So what you've got here in front of you is a 3-stepped approach where we focused on the about me, which is everything to do with your personal details, everything that's down to personality, things that you enjoy, hobbies and things like that. And we'd capture that in different steps. So it could be that the first point is it's just capturing your details and starting to explore the things and discuss the things that you enjoy and what is important to you. So, I mean, things that are important to anybody could be anything from, you know, working in busy environments or working in a quiet area, or it could be anything down to type of clothing they wear and things like that, which we would enable them to select on a process or an activity of how that it reflects on them. Step 2 would look at sort of like the reviewing part of that, also revisiting the step before it, but the activity that involved in that part would expand even further on that, looking at things like their personality, what they enjoy, what's important to them, based on some of the things in here. And that's not to say that whatever they do in the step 3, step 4, or step 3 and step 4 outweighs everyone that they do before that. It could be that they revisit step 1, they revisit step 2, or they could even jump to step 4. It just enables them to dip in and out at one point or at different points of their journeys. So that's the about me section. In step 3 and step 4, again, it comes down to reviewing and looking at things like what's important to them and their personality going forward, and making sure there's something meaningful out of that. So each point that they get to, we'd like them to have an action, something to take forward. So I've built this on an inform, explore, reflect, and an action sort of point. So there's 4 points in the activities on the steps of how they will process the information being presented to them. The education start section, that's very straightforward. It's in terms of what is available to them, but we want them to sort of like sing and dance about the things that they are proud of, what they've achieved. And that could be anything from Star of the Week to Digital Reading Ambassador to all those kind of things, or Digital Leader to Reading Ambassador. And then moving into sort of like their steps and their preferences, including things like barriers to learning, where this will surface, and I'll show you this on the next screen. And step 3 and step 4 being focused around the specific post-16 and post-18 options available to them. And within these, it could be that we're in the activities that will include labour market information that's linked into different options that they're considering. So although labour market information links into the world of work and things, we're looking at how does that tie into the education, which is why this dashed line there along each of the steps, they all intertwine and have got some form of way of linking in, presenting that onto the profile. And then we're going to the careers planning section, which is exploring jobs that are related to the subjects they like, but then also looking at the environments and things that they enjoy about that work. And is it a specific job that they enjoy? Is it actually the environment? Or have they considered the jobs that fall within that job environment, which then in turn gives us an opportunity to look at labour market information that could be regionalised, nationalised, and bringing that to life for a young person, but not only just sort of like looking at things that I would say are realistic for our audience to send students, but also those that can raise aspirations. So it's not just serving up something and saying you could work in this, and this is, you know, do you like this, do you like that? It could be, it gives them those options, but also to see, you know, what could they do? And it's not just closing that door off, it's allowing them to consider it and to see, do you know what, I could do that, which then allows them to move into step 3, which is reviewing their skills and their interests with actions to take forward. It could be that, you know, they now need to inform themselves about an environment that they like, but they didn't actually know about the jobs that were there. And that's, again, something that an advisor could work with that student and capture on a page, which, so I'll show you an activity. The activity I'm going to look at you and show you as an example that I've started building is this one here, on the career planning step 2, which is around job environments and things. So I'll show you that in just a second. But before I move on to that, I just want to show you the profile. So as that flipped the screen now, can you see the profile there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got the 3 sections there, like just from that part, we've presented them here. But what we want young people to see, or anybody who's using this on their profile, is almost at a glance, what have I got? What have I done? So if I've done all these activities, each section, each activity that's titled there at the top, will provide and present the content or the details that they've completed. Now, the things that we've built on the SEND profile or the activities is based on the vocational profile. So a lot of these headers come out from what is being captured in that, but we've built an activity around it. So it's not just a list of questions. It could be a bit of information that they've been provided with from an employer input, it could be a video or anything with then some detail for them to explore, which will then look at different job profiles, different jobs, labour market information, and then a thing for them to reflect on how does that apply to me, and then take it to an action. So you've got, you know, the About Me section there, they can see more, you've got the education, and they've got the career planning, each with areas to put some goals in there. Now, the one that I'm going to show you is this one here, which says My Jobs. So from there, it will surface and bring through from the quizzes that they do within the activity, it will populate this part here. You'll notice at the side there, there's like a little edit button. So we're not saying that, you know, if they've done this, the only way to change it is that they go in and complete an activity and that's how they do that. It could be that they've done the activity, they want to redo it again, and it will change those, but also we're giving them the option to change that as well. So a lot of this is still in early doors. This is kind of like prototypes, but what it will look like is I'm trying to work out just exactly what those activities include to bring through this. But what you see there is pretty much a good example of some of the things that will be presented after they've completed the activities that we've mapped across the 3 areas across the 12 activities. So the actual activity, and again, just excuse the fact that this is not the final look. So again, some of these components that under step 1 where it says at an airport, in a shop, they might look differently there, but this is how we thought we'd like it to present it to a young person. We've got images. We'd like to capture things that are relevant, things that are localized if we can. So if it's in a supermarket, it'll be a localized supermarket or something that's big in that area. Likewise with the airport, if it was in Manchester, it's going to show Manchester Airport and things like that. But making sure that it has, again, the images maintain aspirations and it isn't just bringing things through that are stereotyping anybody. It's bringing things through to make people think, do you know what, I could do that. Whether I've got a learning difficulty, a special educational need, it still enables them to consider it. And what we want them to do there is really, in this first step, is to identify which ones they like. And it's almost like, first thing, what do you see? Do you like it or not? They will click yes or no. But from this part, and I mean, we're still working out how many there's going to be on there, it will then present through a shortlist into step 2. And this is where we want them to explore. So on here, it'd say review your answers. So a little bit of reflection going on here. But after all the ones that they've selected as a yes, this would bring them through the top, well, the favourite, the most favourite areas for them to look at. And then they can then explore further or discuss why they've selected that. So it could be, you know, why have you gone for an airport? They click on the little speech mark. Again, how that presents itself, we're still looking at, but it enables them to put a reason to explore that even further and discuss it further, and linking in with sort of like prompting opportunities and capture any notes that are relevant and meaningful for that individual. But it's not just about the things that they like, because there are, I think as an advisor, there's lots of things you can discuss and explore further with an individual about the things that they don't like. So we thought in that same step, you know, what are the things that you don't like? Because again, there could be actions in there that you discuss with a student, say, you know, is it that you just don't know about it? Do you want to explore it further? What sort of things are influencing your decision to say that you don't like that? Because it could just be myth busting that we get involved with, but all good things for good careers guidance. And that would be then step 2. So moving into step 3, this is where it gets a little bit more detailed. So although they've selected the things that they like and don't like, we want them then to spend that time exploring the jobs that they like. So when they click on here, it will bring up and serve up some of those job titles that are related into that environment. So if it's an airport, you'll get things like customer service, security worker, runway procedures, assisting with, and it's got some duties in there. Again, we're defining that list of exactly what jobs are going to feature on there. But this is the perfect opportunity there for that labour market information and that regionalised info to be presented and surfaced there. We can make it relevant. If it was sort of like a localised hospital, it could be that some of the jobs or the roles that we surface and put up in there are relevant to, i.e. if it was in D2N2, we'd look at Chesterfield Hospital and things like that and make it meaningful for that young person to relate to what is actually there. And then what you can see here is, have you identified the jobs that you're interested in? And if they have, we get them to comment on what it is that they enjoy and what they like about those jobs that they've explored further. whether that's independent or with an advisor. I've built this on working with an advisor. So, but again, keep it in mind that if they didn't need that advisor there or somebody to support them, they could still get on with that with the step-by-step. So again, the text that's there is just in note form. That is being currently worked on and built in a way that almost prompts that user to do it independently. And then on step 4, this is the chance for them to, after having done all that within the activity, to set themselves a realistic short-term and long-term goal. And then we check with understanding here. But what it does is it enables them to take some ownership of this, whether that's a short-term thing that they can do in the immediate effect, or long-term, whether it's going to take them longer than a couple of months or even longer into the future. So it could be, getting some work experience in a shop to reaffirm their decision that they want to be a sales manager or a retail assistant. So those are the kind of things that I thought in terms of building that activity. Now, that is just one example. There are 12 that are currently being built. When we've created these, we put them out, we'll get some feedback, we tweak it, we turn it, we develop it some more. So that's about it from my side of things. If I stop sharing now, I think that might go back to all of us, and then you might want to bring up your slides again, John.
No, that's fine. Thanks, John. That's really useful. We'll keep rolling, and we will kind of move on, because I'm sure people will have a couple of questions that they'll maybe want to ask us at the end, and we'll let people sort of unmute and do that, John. But thank you. I think the important thing there, I think, is what John's done is hopefully just kind of giving a bit of context to some of the things I was saying there in terms of what we've been tasked with around that accessibility, usability, plugging the gaps around content that maybe doesn't exist in a format that the hubs would want it to, and trying to bring in that local employer related information rather than it just being a general sort of question to a young person, trying to bring some context to it. And we firmly believe that the best way of doing that is to make sure that it's related to the local labour market. And the example there that John's given around jobs is a great one. We'll have many more like that, and others related to post-16 and post-18 pathways using providers from the local areas too. So once we get to the end of this, we'll have a common structure across the 12 areas, and then plugged into 12 different flavours of it for well, 3 different flavours of it, if you like, for the 3 different areas, but it'll be consistent, it'll be common, it'll be all doing the same thing. So thanks for that, John. Matt, you wanted to say now just kind of 5 minutes or so just to wrap up a few things before we moved into some questions, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, and I think obviously there's kind of gone on half an hour listening to everyone. I'm going to go slightly off piste, and John, you're going to have to be prepared for this. What might seem slightly random question, but I'm going to throw something out for audience participation here, is, and it'll hopefully make sense as we progress, but just in the chat using yes or no, could everyone just indicate whether they have used a food delivery service such as HelloFresh or Gusto, just to make sure everyone's awake and paying attention. Looking like it's about 50-50, a few no's. For the people who type no, could you just type in whether you know what they are and how they work? Just because it'll give us a bit of context for the next 5 minutes. Yeah, good. So the people who haven't used it know what they are. So good, and good to see. I've not checked whether everyone's answered there, but it looks like we've got enough people still listening after half an hour being talked out with hopefully what has been useful information. But I think kind of the best way I would summarise what we're trying to achieve with the SEND content is very similar to what HelloFresh and Gusto do, in that Start and other platforms have all the ingredients, they're all there, they're all in the cupboard. It's just knowing which ones to pick out when to make which meals. So what John, JP as we call him, John Paley, just distinguishing from the other John, what JP's talked about there is kind of the equivalent of 12 recipe cards that can be easily accessed, easily served up. And I guess continuing that HelloFresh analogy, it's getting everything served up at the right time, but also the menu cards are really easy step-by-step guides to follow. So that's kind of the approach that we've taken with this, and hopefully that kind of sets the scene that we're not trying to do anything revolutionary. This isn't, the vocational profiles have been around. We're not trying to kind of change the world. It's just trying to make it easier for all of the audience, all of the stakeholders supporting the SEND students. The other things I'd just like to kind of point out is we're not the SEND specialists, hence the importance of getting input, and the activities that JP's talked through. There's already been some involvement collaborating with the careers hubs, and there will continue to be. And as with menu cards, etc., they're not the complete solution. The platform can help and will help, but the reality is that the students that we're looking to support with this will need face-to-face, will need one-to-one guidance. So the platform is there to support that process, provide the structure, provide the process to follow. But and I know John and JP mentioned that students should be able to walk through it themselves, but a lot of it is the context. It's the discussions around why is a cafe of interest, not of interest? What is the range of roles from entry level through to senior leadership roles that need to be kind of tailored within the individual the individual student's situation. So yeah, that was kind of the key thing for me, just wrapping up, trying to simplify what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then what we're looking to do with that similar approach is kind of use the way the technology is being developed to support that, to support other cohorts of students. So we're kind of taking a similar approach and looking at how we can adapt that, tweak it to serve high risk of NEET students in year 11, students in year 12 who maybe become NEET, but again, similar approach, easy to access activities with an easy to access profile that can, because one of the things that's come out, and the thing we touched on here, is the fact that there might be multiple people supporting these students. So actually having everything in one place digitally that someone can access, rather than it be on a piece of paper on one person's desk, and then when someone else is with the same student, they don't know what's been answered, what's been done so far. So that was kind of it for me in terms of kind of the process. I know we've got about 20 minutes lined up for questions. If anybody's got anything, John, do you want to add anything?
No, we thought, thanks Matt, we thought we'd leave plenty of time because if people have got questions, if not, we've kept it to the 40 minutes that we wanted to. So yeah, if you wanted to drop any questions in the chat, please do, or equally, there's not a huge number of us on the call. Absolutely feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if anybody's got any, but hopefully we've achieved our first objective, which was to make sure that we could share what it is that what we've been doing, and hopefully you've found that useful at least. So I'll pause for a second there. There's nothing in the chat, but does anybody got any questions about anything that any of us have said? I'm just going to go to Deb's put her hand up. Hiya, Deb, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, hi, thanks, John. Morning, everyone. I'm one of the enterprise coordinators in the York and North Yorkshire Career Hub. And forgive me, my question might be a bit naive because I was just literally introduced to this yesterday afternoon and asked to come online this morning. Can I just ask about the costing of all this, John? What's the background to all that, the funding?
Yeah, nice to see you again, Deb. It's been a long time, actually. So the careers hubs have kind of funded a lot of this development. So the three that we've worked with, and collectively they've put money into the pot across the three areas. So there's a difference between how much, I guess, they've put in that we probably need to work out, because there's been different strands of funding that's coming in compared to what the actual localization a kind of amount would take, which we're still, to be entirely honest, we're still working out. Something that we're trying to establish is once we've, and I'll answer the kind of the initial question in a second, but once we got to the point where we've established this core technology, ideally what we want to be able to do then is for other regions to be able to come along and say 90% of that, great, this 10% how can we weave some things in. So I haven't got the answers to how much that last bit would cost, but I don't know whether Matt has got the exact answer to the figures for anything to do with how much, but we've obviously got big contracts with the 3 areas and we've taken some funding out of each one. So Matt, do you know the exact figures that we've got in terms of what we spending on the technical side of things and the time spent on the core kind of journey?
Well, I guess just clarifying the question. I'm guessing, Deb, what the question you're asking is about what would the costing be for yourselves if you wanted to move forward with this, rather than the costs to date. And I think what John said there, our model, what we've created is we've created a structure and a process that can then be tailored to your own needs with your own local labour market information, and that in principle comes down to a time and materials basis. If you wanted to change a little bit, there'd be one cost. If it was a huge overlay of different information, that would be a separate piece. So it's probably something worth picking up because it's kind of a bit how long's a piece of string with the costing, but the fact that the structure, the process is there, it's easy. It's kind of the wiring's all done. It just needs just mapping to whichever labour market information you would want. So yeah, we can pick up with you separately, Deb, as to exactly what you might want and how we'd then.
So would there be like an initial development cost and tailoring, and then is there like a licensing after that? Do they have their own costs after that?
Yeah, and it's interesting because we've said this well now, really, just to kind of share thoughts. So yeah, we're still in our, and we're kind of in the getting the project underway for the 3 regions we're working with. So we're still fine tuning the ongoing piece, but in principle, yes, it would be a bespoking of the content plus then an ongoing license fee, which it would be good to have a conversation because we're wondering whether that might be area wide, it could be school, it could be individual establishment level. But if you'd be open for a conversation on that, it would be good to follow that up.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah,
cool.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Deb. I can't see any other hands up, but people can pop hands up or unmute yourself if you've got a question you want to ask about anything.
Hi, Penny here. Hello.
Hi, Penny.
Hello, just a quick question. Can the platform be uploaded to Compass Plus with the results that the young person has put in, so that it would complement the evaluation piece from a whole careers perspective? Because I know that your platform can be uploaded, downloaded and into Compass Plus. Wondered if you had considered this platform to have that same offer.
Yeah, it has been considered. So you're absolutely right. So anything a member of staff would currently put into the system can be made compatible with Compass Plus. We've just started scoping another part of the system where some student activities would be downloadable and put into Compass Plus as well. So the exact same principle would apply to this. So the 12 areas that JP talked us through, each one's an activity, so we can track completion of that activity. So the intention would be that we'd be able to, and this is something that we would need to do probably after this initial phase, but the intention would be tracking completion, if you like, of those activities. So you saw on the profile where we had the progress bar, to be able, because we can track that, the intention would be that we can track that. There's no reason why that information and that X student has done that activity with this learning outcome, which maps to this Gatsby benchmark, couldn't be extracted for the system. It's a good point. We're still trying to finalise some of the deliverables with the 3 careers hubs, but it's interesting to hear. Be interested to know if anybody else on the call would see that as because I don't know how important that would be for, I guess, schools in terms of adoption, because if it does that as well, they'd probably be more inclined to.
Personally speaking, from the cohort of the Southern Inclusion Cluster schools that I oversee, alongside my colleague Lisa, who's also on the call, they're starting to use Compass Plus a lot more. And they're looking at it from the deep dive perspective. They're using it as a one-stop shop. They're using it for putting all of their information on. And I'm just thinking about also with regards to your platform, the actual jobs obviously are local labour market based, but do they go anywhere? So if, for example, I want a job in a cafe, does the link then, or could it then be attached to an inclusive employer in that local area, so it becomes real? And I don't mean this disrespectfully. There's a lot of platforms that will showcase job sectors, industry sectors. Let's work in healthcare, but actually it'd be amazing if it could link even to 1 or 2 employers in that geographical location that actually offer that fully inclusive approach. And having that linked with Compass Plus would potentially allow them to identify the opportunity of work experience and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's a really
just remember, the idea came from me, so when we come to you, we'll expect a reduction.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and so already, JP, you mentioned if a young person was looking at so for example, a hospital learning environment, if they were in D2N2, we'd probably, because we already work with Chesterfield Royal Hospital there, the information we give a young person about Chesterfield Royal Hospital includes a little bit about who they are and what they do, but as part of their profile, if you like, there are their live opportunities. So we include already that information. So if they've got a work experience program, you can access it and you can click through to apply. If they've got a supported internship, obviously these would be specific opportunities, and therefore the employer would need to be the right employer. But the intention here would be that through certain activities, we could get young people to look at employers who have got those opportunities, and do it in the way that we do on the main product already, by showcasing what's live and what they can apply for. So it's a great idea, and it comes back to what the schools really wanted, which was employer-led and employer-related content and access to those opportunities for young people, which you've said they find really hard to kind of source and find. So again, we certainly haven't been able to achieve everything in this first phase of the build, but if that's a really interesting point, and it's good that we do it already, and we could absolutely apply that thinking to this level. John, do you think?
I totally agree. Yeah, it's exactly what you've said was almost what was in my head. So yeah, perfect. I'm not going to take your idea, but yeah, yeah, good.
Cool. Thanks.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Penny. Okay, Laura's had to leave, no problem. So we've got a few minutes left. Is any final kind of couple of questions from anybody? If not, I can kind of close things off, because I know I've had a couple of emails from people, some on the call, some not, who wanted to follow this up with a conversation that was more specific to their area. So what I'm going to do, I won't pop it in the chat. What I'll do is I'll pop an email around after this with a link to the session recording if you want that, but also a link that if you wanted to book sort of a follow-up conversation for 30-40 minutes or so with one of us that would talk in more detail about how this could be applied in your region. I've just spotted Alvina, I'll come to you in a second. That wasn't a virtual hand, that was a real hand that went up. I caught that one. So yeah, I'll pop a link around afterwards. If anybody wants to talk about this in the context of their hub and their region specifically, you can book a kind of a follow-up call with us, and we can answer any more of your questions as well. But Alvina, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, we've got over 20. We have got 20 SEND schools. I'm Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And we took on 15 SEND schools about a year ago. So the ones that we had are at a slightly different level than the 15 we took on, because obviously it does take a little while, much more time for them to sort of catch up. One of the things that I've been speaking to our special schools about is they have said that their cohort, and this could be COVID related, but the cohort at the moment are not as able as previous cohorts of the last couple of years. So I do wonder whether it's COVID related, and that a lot of their students do need support. So I was just wondering, what percentage, John, of the students able to access it independently compared to those that might need support in special schools? Do you have any data on that at all?
Good question. I don't know if JP or Matt have got any views on that. I haven't got any data on that.
Yeah, I think the platform's been developed with the support network in mind, and the data that we see across the whole of the STAR STAR platforms is that most people are accessing this in some kind of guided, either it's classroom or it's ICT suite. Some people might be set independent homework, but even in mainstream, it's very much guided. So our view on this would be that, and as kind of touched on, that it's a tool to support the work that's already going on with students, rather than something that you could give an SEND student a URL and hope they could. There might be bits that they can do as additional homework, but I think that I would work on the based on the consultation that we've done and the work that we've done, that it's a tool to support the stakeholders working with the SEND student, that and the activity that John talked through, almost the prompting the student to, do you like, would you see yourself working in this environment, that environment, rather than it being independent. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's because it was only something I've picked up recently, because I was organising a careers carousel, and I was looking at some activities, and they were saying, the students would need a lot of help. We've noticed the students are not as able as previous years for this particular year group. So it was just that, with that in mind, I wondered. But no, that's a great explanation. Thank you, Matthew.
And I think it kind of adds to the real, one of the key bits being able to track meaningful progress through. So rather than just an open access website that you could point a student at, that there is the ability for them to track their progress as they go. So if it's one person working with them today and then someone else in 3 weeks, you've got the record of what's been done, rather than, well, I remember going to it, but I can't remember which pages I looked at, and I can't remember what I did. So I think, the facilitating and enabling the work done by the support worker and anyone working with those SEND students is key.
That's great. Thank you very much. And I would very much like to speak with you at some point as well. So that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna, unless there's any final questions and people want to pop their hands up, then we'll wrap this up, and we will send that link out, that if anybody wants to book onto a follow-up chat, we'll set up individual meetings, no problem. We've got people disappearing now off to other meetings at 11 o'clock, so I'll let everybody else do that as well. But thanks to everyone for coming along. I'll be back in touch by email later. It was nice to virtually meet everybody, so thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.